I'm back, and I'm filming at 5 p.m. in late July in front of a window in Florida. I think the heat index today was like 112. So don't say I never gave you nothing. Add to that I'm drinking wine with a little purple straw. Don't judge me because I have to film my Tipsy Ipsy series, my first video in that series right after this, which means by the time it's time to film, I need to be tipsy. Why am I so good at not sitting in the center of frame? What's up, guys? It's V Renee. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you couldn't tell, this is the first video I'm filming after being on vacation in upstate New York. I pre-recorded all of July's videos except this one and the one that you saw a couple days ago, which was the first video in my Tipsy Ipsy series. But today I wanted to talk to you about something that seems to be the iconic classic struggle of every writer, author, blogger, etc., and it is the opening. We've all been in a bookstore or a library, flipping through books, just checking out our genre area, trying to see what's good, and we flip a book open and either it fizzles or it explodes, and it almost always has to do with those first couple lines, the opening. Whether to you that's the first sentence, the first paragraph, the first page, your opening is, it can't be said enough, completely and totally 100% the only thing 99% of the time that the reader cares about. You can have a cool cover, you can have a cool title, you can have a cool back blurb, but if I open the page, the first page, and it doesn't pique my interest, then I'm putting it back. So how do we ensure that the reader keeps reading? How do we ensure that we write a kick-ass opening? And in order to do that, you have to first answer this question. What is the purpose of your opening? What is the goal? And the goal is the same for every author, in every book, in every genre, in every style, no matter what. The purpose of the opening is to make the reader want to know more. You want to pique their interest, and you want them to keep turning the page, because then they will buy the book, then they will read the book, then they will recommend the book, then they will get to hear the story that you have to tell. So with that being said, I wanted to give you guys some do's and don'ts on how to write the best opening that you can possibly write. The first don't lie. Don't misrepresent your book by starting it with something that's totally not relevant to what the book is about. It's gonna piss your reader off once they realize that your hook was just a tactic to get them in. And while you want to suck them in, you don't want to do it under false pretenses. So you don't want to lie, but you do want to be vague. If you want people to keep reading, have them wonder what you're talking about. Make them start to ask questions from the very beginning. Don't start with the weather. Do open in the middle. Start in the middle of a conversation. Start in the middle of an argument. Drop us right into the action. That helps you introduce characters organically without having to info dump right at the beginning. You get a great sense of who characters are from the dialogue that they have with one another. And so if we're dropped right in the middle of an argument, a conflict, the middle of the action, we get to see firsthand who your people are, what's going on, what's important, what's the point. Don't start with your character waking up for the day. Same thing as the weather. This is so cliche, so overdone, and so fucking boring, y'all. Come on. Do introduce the main conflict. Again, you want to be vague, you want to have them asking questions, but you want them to know right off the bat, okay, something's kind of going on here. For example, in my debut novel, Civil Blood, we have two first chapters because we get the book from two different points of view from both River and Fina. And so from River's point of view, that's the very first chapter of Civil Blood. So that's where we get that really vague, something's going on, we're right in the middle of the action type of situation, because he's going through an awakening ceremony in Barton Heights, and we don't know anything about what that is. We don't really get much context until much later. And then the second chapter, or the first chapter from Fina's point of view, is her watching the awakening ceremony with her siblings across the lake and wondering what the hell is going on over there in that weird, creepy little town. Why do they hate us? This is the experience that she's having with them at school, etc. So we get the main conflict right away, and we also get the biggest question of like, what the hell is going on right away within the first two chapters. Don't info dump. This is where the great raging battle of prologues comes from. It's like, do we use a prologue? Do we not use a prologue? No matter your feelings on that, I think it really depends on the story. What you don't want is for your first chapter to read as a prologue, because especially in fantasy, prologues tend to be our our queen died and this is why our world is the way that it is right now. Your first chapter should never be a socioeconomic lesson on your fantasy world. Not ever. Like, ever. That is not going to catch my attention. I don't care how cool the history of your world is. Again, that comes from dropping your reader into the middle of the action. Do not start off with a history lesson. I want to know what's happening right now. I want to know what is going on in the story that I'm going to be reading, ideally from the perspective of someone involved in what I'm about to start reading. And finally, and most importantly, do realize that you can come back to the opening. Everyone gets, at least in my experience, gets hung up on their opening chapter, hung up on their opening paragraph, because we know it's really important. But I want you to understand that you can write draft after draft after draft of your book before you get a good opening. I can't even tell you how terrible the first 3 drafts, their opening chapters of Civil Blood, how absolute dog shit they were. They were awful. It wasn't until draft 4 that I finally understood, like, this is not going to engage anybody and this kind of sucks. And I'm info dumping. I'm starting at the beginning of the day. Like, it was so boring and uninteresting and info dumpy. And if I would have just stopped and been like, oh, I knew the opening chapters weren't great, but if I stood there and just kept trying to work on them, the rest of the book would have never gotten written. It wasn't until I could finish a draft that I could understand how the opening would affect it in terms of context, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't until I finished the whole story that I saw, like, okay, well, these are the things that we can drop in the beginning to kind of let the audience know the main conflict and what's going on and kind of introduce everybody organically. It wasn't until I got 2 or 3 drafts in that it really made sense to me. So don't stress if you're writing your first, second, even third draft and your opening still sounds like shit. Just write it. You can always come back to it. It's very important because it's kind of difficult. And that's all the advice I have for you guys on how to write a good opening. I'm gonna be honest, I was lucky in the respect that I didn't know my opening was the right one until it was. Like, I just felt it and I knew that this was how I wanted to open Civil Blood. That hasn't been as difficult with Accidental Evils or with Something Wicked, which are the second and third book in that series. But with my new project, Blood from a Stone, that has been extremely difficult. And I'm only on draft 2, but you guys know I've had a huge history of having to rewrite draft 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 of that book, that had just been dicking around with it. And one of the main problems is that I wouldn't leave the opening alone because I knew it was important. So don't let that hinder you. I make new videos every single Wednesday, and I will see you guys next Wednesday with the first video of August. Bye.